Hello and welcome to another video on how to learn to code for absolute beginners. Today we're going to learn a new data type, sets. If you remember your math in high school, maybe you are already familiar with sets. If you're not, sets are just a collection of elements that are grouped based on some rule. For example, the set of all yellow cars, the set of black horses, the set of people within the age of between 20 and 30. In Python, sets have very specific characteristics. They are unordered, so you can't get one element by its position like you do in a list or a tuple. Sets are unique, meaning that you can't have a duplicate like you can have in a list or a tuple. And sets, although can be modified, each element in the set must be of an immutable type. Let's see what all this means. You define a set by using curly braces, like in this case. Don't get confused with dictionaries, which also use curly braces, so check the video about dictionaries to refresh your memory. As we mentioned before, one characteristic of the set is the elements are unique. So let's try to add the same name to this set. So let's add one element to this list, names, add. This is the function to add an element, and for example, Kirk. If we do this, nothing happens. Okay, let's check now the content of names, and we can see that Kirk is still one element. So we didn't add a duplicate of it. It can only have one element. Now let's add a new element. Here you can see the other characteristic of sets, that they are unordered. In fact, although we added Miss Chapel after the set was formed, the string Chapel is somewhere in the middle of the set. There is in fact no middle, no beginning, there is no order in a set. It just appears whenever it wants. The final characteristic is that the element of a set must be mutable. To understand this, think about each element by their own unique properties. For example, the string making one of the names is immutable. You can't modify that string unless you replace that string object by a new one with a new string. Replacing one object with a new one is not the same as changing the object contents. This means that you can't add a list to a set, because a list is just mutable. You can add, remove, and replace objects inside the list. That's why it's called mutable, and sets can't handle that. You can add a tuple, because as we saw in the previous video, a tuple is immutable. Based on the previous tuple that we have before names, we want to remove, for example, McCoy. So in order to do that, we have an operation, which is remove, and then we have to pass the object of that, this string. You see the string is unique, so there's no way it's going to think it's a new one. When we execute this and we query again names, we can see that McCoy disappeared. Now that we don't have McCoy anymore, if we try to remove it again, for example, in this case, we try to remove an element that doesn't exist in the set, we will get an error. If we don't want to get that error and we want to just have like a passive removal saying that we try to remove it but we don't get an error in return, we can use this card. So if we use this card, you see the element is not there, but it's not returning anything, any error. So just move on. Another thing we can do is use the function pop. This will return a random element. Remember, sets are not ordered. So it's not going to return the last added or the previous one, the first, nothing like that. It's just going to return you any element. And by returning it, it's going to remove it also from the list. So if we execute it again, we see, like, for example, in this case, Chekhov, the list, the set is becoming smaller. But don't trust that pop is going always to return you the first or the last. It's just going to return one element randomly. If we want to clear completely the set, we can use clear, and this will empty the set. If we query names again, the set object still exists in that variable called names, but it's clear, is empty. There are no elements inside, so we can keep adding more elements if we want. So now you know how to create and modify sets in Python. They are very powerful, and we will talk more about them in other videos. In the next video, we will talk about modules. So stay tuned, subscribe, and thank you for watching.